This is Making Stitches. This week we hear from Agnis Smallwood, a weaver sharing age-old skills with a new generation.
I think weaving has been kind of the fabric, I guess, of history for so many years, and so it's not left us, but obviously it has diminished in recent years. But yeah, it's nice that I get to have the opportunity to teach weaving as well as a few other textile processes, but mainly weaving in lots of different locations. Yeah, and share that with people in different ways so that they can engage with that for themselves.
Hello and welcome to Making Stitches, a podcast celebrating crafts and the stories of the makers behind them. My name's Lindsay, and this week I'm sharing a chat I had with a designer, maker and educator who creates beautiful woven fabric. Agnis Smallwood is a weaver based in Yorkshire who works on solo projects as well as collaborations with museums and other organisations, spreading knowledge about the age-old techniques of weaving using looms. Just a few generations ago, looms were a familiar sight in domestic settings, allowing artisans the chance to work from home. Just like the generations of weavers who've gone before her, Agnis is currently working from her studio at home, which is where she spoke to me from.
I weave by hand in my spare bedroom at home, which I use as my studio, and I've been doing that now for about over a decade, really. So as well as weaving from home, I would normally also be out and about, collaborating and facilitating workshops, teaching kind of with and alongside other people on kind of projects or one-off workshops. So that's kind of a little brief overview of kind of what my week might look like normally.
And how did you get into weaving? Because it's quite a niche craft, isn't it?
Yeah, there's not so many of us. So I left school and I thought I was going to go on to do graphic design. I went and completed an arts foundation course, which is like a 1-year intense course doing loads of different options really within the arts. So it included kind of multimedia and ceramics and textiles and photography and it was in that course that I went into the constructed textile department, and that was kind of the first time I'd really experienced weaving. And from then on, I was kind of hooked really, and kind of changed what I was going to do. So I did my foundation at Cumbria Institute of the Arts, and then I stayed on there to then do my degree, which then became Contemporary Applied Arts, and that focused on constructed, printed and stitched textiles, and also ceramics. So by the time I'd kind of reached my third year, I'd kind of dropped some of them and I'd specialised in ceramics and also in weaving. It was kind of from there that I then kind of took my career path, as it were. So when I left uni, I then went on to become self-employed, and I kind of picked up the weaving aspect. And from that point, it was kind of a practical decision, really, because I needed to be able to work on my practice in my home. I didn't have a garage or an outdoor space or studio as such. So it was kind of really a practical decision that made me kind of pursue the weaving side more than the ceramics. But actually, that served me well, and I've not really needed another side to it. I felt like that's really kind of, been enough really to get my head round for the whole of my practice.
That's really nice to hear, because I mean I've got friends and family who studied arts of various different sorts to higher education level, and then unfortunately were not able to pursue a career in something that they really loved, and ended up having to take more mainstream jobs and then doing the crafts or the art or the painting or whatever as kind of a hobby or a sideline. But that's really nice to hear a story of somebody who's gone to university and been able to pursue something that's obviously a passion to them, and then see it through to the next level and continue with it.
Yeah, I think I have been really lucky to be able to do that. And looking back, I think I must have been brave at the time, just kind of jumping in and going for it. And I don't know if I'd be quite so brave today, but I think maybe that's what I wanted to do. And there wasn't a job that said, please come and be a weaver and, you know, also maybe deliver some workshops. And that didn't really exist for me to go find. So I sort of had to make it for myself. I do realise that I am very lucky to be able to have a job that I really enjoy and I really love, because that isn't the case for everybody.
No, absolutely. Now, looking at your website and seeing the looms that you use for your workshops in a couple of different mills in West Yorkshire, it looks very similar to the kind of looms that were in a domestic setting not that long ago. And it's really interesting to see that people are kind of dipping into this as a hobby, something that used to be like bread and butter for so many people, you know, just a couple of generations back.
Yeah, I think weaving has been kind of the fabric, I guess, of history for so many years, and so it's not left us, but obviously it has diminished in recent years. But yeah, it's nice that I get to have the opportunity to teach weaving as well as a few other textile processes, but mainly weaving in lots of different locations. And share that with people in different ways so that they can engage with that for themselves. And it is quite unique, really, because not so many people do have that opportunity now. So, for me, I hadn't done it at school. So it was only when I went and did the foundation course that I experienced it and then realised, you know, I really love it. So it's nice to be able to have these opportunities for people to have a go.
Have you seen a resurgence then in weaving in recent years and more people inquiring about courses?
I guess I have, as my practice has developed, if that makes sense. So I'm hesitant to say whether that's a universal trend or whether that's because I'm obviously working in this area, so it kind of probably skews the stats slightly. But definitely people are really interested in not just weaving, but also in craft and process and technique and learning skills. Whether they want to do it because they want it to be their career or whether they as a hobby or a pastime, I don't think it matters. I think there are lots of people that still are making and creating at home in different ways.
What is it about weaving that you love so much?
I think it's for me that, and it's kind of similar to ceramics as well. I think what I'm drawn to is being able to construct something out of nothing. So using your hands to manipulate either a lump of clay or, in my case now, more yarn, and being able to form that into some sort of structure, artwork, product, a thing, which didn't exist before, if that makes sense. So you have like your cone of yarn or your ball of wool or whatever, and it doesn't really have a structure to it. But once you start weaving and you kind of interlacing your warp and your weft, which are the two kind of directions, and they're coming together, you get a structure, a thing, a piece of cloth, an artwork. And so that is the thing I think that really draws me in.
How has the pandemic affected the way you've been working this year?
Yeah, well, it's certainly been a different year. And I guess, up and down, if I'm honest. At first, I guess the lockdown created quite a lot of work, not as in paid work, but as in things to sort out, workshops to cancel, rearrange, pause, etc. And then it all went quiet, like it did for so many people. And I found that quite hard to get into a rhythm. I mean, you have to be motivated to be self-employed, but to have no deadlines and to have no kind of structure in your week, you know, a totally empty week or calendar, is a bit weird for me, really. So I started by I guess practical things. I repainted part of my studio, and I took everything out and I reorganised it. And I guess that was in some sort of attempt to try and structure life, as it were, as I was doing that. But it was good to do, because I think over the years, that's something that the space in which you work is really important, and you can't really take out 3 weeks to kind of pull it apart. So I took the advantage of that this year and then reorganised it all. And then it was kind of a little bit slow, if I'm honest. And so I made myself sort of do a little project. I thought, well, if I plan something that I know I can complete and have some sort of boundaries to it, I think I can do this and kind of help me get back feeling creative again, because it's actually quite difficult to be creative in the lockdown, I found. So for years, I collected the little bits of fleece from a spinning or a felting workshop that were a little bit too sad to bring out at the next workshop. So I got all those. I carded them, I combed them, I spun them up, and then I wove them to make a series of placemats. And that kind of project was it was contained enough that I could kind of work through that in my head, as it were. So that was good, and it kind of sparked off the work after that, which was, looking back now and having a few months to reflect. It was a really good project to do. And I guess for me, I've spent a lot of lockdown in the garden. I'm lucky to have a little garden, so I've been outside, digging, trying to tame parts of the garden that are not so tame. and I've also grown some veggies for the first time. It's been a real learning curve, and I'm a total amateur, and I've got a lot to learn. But I've just really enjoyed it. I'd go out each day and be like, oh, they've grown a little bit more, or the seedlings are coming up and stuff. And I found that really kind of helpful, a way to kind of just escape a little bit from this year. And then it has actually become kind of the starting point for a new collection of scarves that I kind of launched, I don't know, a few weeks ago, maybe a month or something now, which were all based around vegetables, which sounds a bit random to have a vegetable scarf. But my work is I'm really drawn to colour, and to really looking at things. So actually, when I started kind of growing a few veggies, I realised that the colours on vegetables are incredible. You kind of take it for granted that, like a carrot is orange or whatever. But when you really start looking at it, you realise, whoa, it's really, really vibrant. And I also grew a few potatoes, and I thought potato flowers were all white. But actually, one of the varieties, I'm not going to be able to remember off the top of my head, but one of them had flowers that were like violet purple colour with a little bit of white and these gorgeous orangey yellow middles. And so that provided, a real source of kind of new interest for me for developing this kind of range of vegetable scarves that I've just launched. So there's been pluses in this year, but definitely tricky bits along the way as well. And it's nice that it's kind of, having been able to launch this collection kind of brings some of those threads together that were really different at the beginning of the year. Like, I didn't intend to launch a new collection on vegetables in March. I didn't know that that's where that would go. So now I've had time to kind of look back a little bit. It's nice to see how those things have come together, even if living through it at the time was a bit tricky.
That's really interesting to hear, actually. I think a lot of people have found their creativity stunted to start with because, like you said, you had all this time on your hands all of a sudden, which in normal times you'd really appreciate, to be able to be left undisturbed to get on with what you want to do. But when you're just staring down your diary and there's just empty pages after page, it's quite interesting to see how, people have looked in different directions to get inspiration for their work, and your vegetable patch has obviously borne fruit in more ways than one.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
So would you say that your craft and your creativity has helped you through the difficulties and the uncertainties that you've faced this year?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's such a part of my life, if that makes sense, being creative, and making and making with other people, that it is, very embedded into my my life. So definitely, it has been a part of this year just as much as it has others. And although different to the year I maybe thought I was going to have back in January, it's still very much intertwined into the year that I've had.
Looking ahead to next year, what kind of plans do you have in the pipeline, and how do you see like the impact of the things that you've done this year? How are you going to build on those for the future?
Yeah, it's hard thinking ahead, if I'm honest. Like, I'm nervous to commit plans to paper, or in some ways even to voice them out loud, because I just don't quite know what's going to happen. But I think that's the same for everyone. That's what I have to remember. So I guess I'm hoping that this little collection will kind of run, and I've already started having ideas for a few other little vegetables that I can add to it. So I think that's definitely going to be something that I pursue further into next year. But I'd also really love to be able to get back to the kind of more collaborative side of my practice. And normally my making that I do just on my own is probably only about 20%. So 80% of my practice now is with other people, facilitating projects or workshops. Whether that's in schools or community groups, galleries, museums. So I'm hoping that I can get back to more of that next year, because I'm really missing working alongside and with other people, obviously at a safe distance at the moment, but there's something different about being in the same space as somebody as opposed to doing it over screen or over Zoom or something. So I would hope that side can develop further, and I guess we've all got new ways of working that we didn't know about, in March and April this year. So hopefully we can, find ways to adapt further and to be able to, make some of these projects hopefully happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one thing to be able to be connected online with somebody else or on the phone as we are today, but also it's a completely different plane to be able to be in the same space as another human being, especially when you're doing something creative with your hand. I've had sewing lessons done remotely, but your teacher's not standing there saying, no, you need to take that zip out and sew it back in a different way because it's not good enough. It's just a completely different atmosphere and experience to actually being with real human beings. And I think that's probably something that everybody's missing this year.
Yeah, I think so. And I think also because I have been able to, from sort of September up until the second national lockdown that we've had in the UK, in England, I have been back out doing some workshops again in the real world, as it were. And I think people do really value and appreciate that space. And I guess when I was back teaching again, I hadn't really realised how much previously I had used my hands and my arms, waving them in the air and pointing and, showing people side by side how to do things or adjust things, and so actually that's been a different way of needing to teach, which is fine. It's more about expressing things through words, but actually for quite a lot of us that we express a lot of it through showing with our hands or manipulating fabric or using equipment in a certain way. And so I think to be able to get back to a little bit more of that would be lovely, but that's going to be, in time, that will come, sort of thing.
And if you'd like to see some of Agnis's work and find out more about her workshops, you can find all that information on her website. I'll include a link to that in the show notes for this episode. I think her vegetable patch projects are inspired, and I particularly love her radish scarf. Thanks very much, Agnis, for finding the time to speak to me for Making Stitches. And thank you to you too for listening. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please consider liking, subscribing or reviewing Making Stitches on your favourite podcast provider. Heather DT did that last month, describing it as wonderful and looking forward to hearing some more. Well, thank you for that, Heather. Now, speaking of more episodes, I've decided not to take a break over Christmas. I thought this year, more than ever, you might appreciate a bit of crafty festive chat over the Christmas period, especially if you're stuck at home and not able to see friends and family as you normally would. I have a bumper Christmas episode coming your way on Christmas Day, featuring stitch stories from Making Stitches listeners and a catch-up from a few friends of the podcast, so please do look out for that. Now, since Making Stitches first launched back in April this year, I've been incredibly lucky to find some fabulously loyal listeners. These are people I've never met, yet have been so supportive of this podcast project since it began. They've shared episodes, commented on social media posts, and sent me messages. One of those people was Anu Dent. She's literally Anu on Instagram, and from the start she sent me positive comments and was a super cheerleader for Making Stitches, especially at times when I wondered whether anyone out there was actually listening. I'm so grateful for her support. Anu was originally from Finland but lived in England, and she was a crocheter. I was really sad to hear that last month Anu died. She was being treated for cancer, which she'd been fighting for 2 years. I'd like to send my condolences to Anu's husband Matt and all her family and friends, and with Matt's permission, I'm dedicating this episode to Anu's memory. That's all for this week. I'll be back again on Christmas Day with that special episode featuring lots of inspiring makers. My name's Lindsay, and this podcast was recorded and edited by me. You can also find me on my blog, Postcard from Gibraltar. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep safe and enjoy your crafting.